Hello, Pastor Brian here. Ben, I've been looking at the biblical, you might say, signs of the times that would indicate that we are actually and really right near the end of this age and the coming of Jesus Christ. And this is part 4. And I want to go to the Old Testament prophecy of Ezekiel, chapter 38 and 39. It describes a military invasion of the land of Israel in the last days there. Here's a few of the verses from chapter 38. Verse 2 to 6 go like this. Son of man, set your face against Gog in the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I am against you, O Gog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. I will turn you around. I will put hooks in your jaws. I will lead you out with all of your army, horses and horsemen, all splendidly clothed, a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Persia, Ethiopia and Libya are with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all its troops, the house of Togarmah from the far north and all its troops. Many people are with you. This great military mass. And here's what he said, verse 14 to 16, describe the invasion this way. Therefore, son of man, prophesy and say to Gog, Thus says the Lord God, on that day when my people Israel dwell safely, will you not know it? Then you will come from your place out of the far north, you and many peoples with you, all of them riding on horses, great company and a mighty army. You will come up against my people Israel like a cloud to cover the land. It will be in the latter days that I will bring you against my land, so that the nations may know me, that I am hallowed in you, O Gog, before their eyes. He goes on and describes that God himself will intervene and destroy that massive invasion. And it will come in the last days. Here's what's interesting about it. You look at these places today that he describes. Gog, of the land of Magog, Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal is very likely Russia. And then you've got describing Persia there. That is clearly Iran. And he talks about Gomer and all its troops, and the house of Togarmah. Gomer is Turkey, and the house of Togarmah is could be Western Turkey. It could be the southern part of Russia itself. And so you've got these allies coming against the land of Israel in the last days. You know what's interesting? Syria has been plagued with civil war, and Russian forces have entered there. Iran has a big military influence in Syria, which is the northern border of Israel. So you've got Russia and Iran there. And Turkey also has a military presence right there. And these countries are in league and have traditionally been anti-Israeli. Take Russia, for instance, which may end up leading this military invasion. Russia has, through the history of Israel, has stood with Israel's Arab Islamic enemies. And in fact, they've been using Russia equipment to fight Israel. Russia has stood against Israel traditionally. Israel feels like the situation now in Syria, because of the heavy Russian influence, is more of a Russian colony than it is the country of Syria. And they feel their northern border really is bordering Russia itself because of that. Many of them have said that they believe the day is coming when Russia will attack them, and they will have to fight a war against Russia itself. Interesting what's going on right now. And then you look at Iran. Iran vehemently anti-Israel. Israeli, taking a strong stand against Israel, desiring to see Israel just wiped off the map and utterly destroyed. The previous president of Iran, who was considered a moderate, made statements like Israel was a cancerous tumor on the earth that needed to be removed. An Iranian source put it this way: any war Zionists, that would be Israel, start will lead to them being erased. The current president of Iran is now a hardliner, and he so clearly wants Israel eliminated. And Iran is doing everything they can to produce nuclear weapons. Watch out for that. And then there's Turkey. Turkey traditionally had been a secular country. It is a part of NATO. But since Erdogan became the president, they have been moving more and more toward the Islamic area. They have become an Islamic state. They desire to reestablish the caliphate. The caliphate was the head of the Islamic world, and Turkey fancies itself reestablishing that caliphate over the Islamic world. Israel is, of course, this huge thorn in the side of the Islamic world, and Turkey, consequently, has more and more lined up against Israel. Erdogan has likened Israel to Nazi Germany. He's accused cultural genocide of the Palestinians upon Israel. And Turkey and Russia have been very close. Even despite the Ukrainian war going on now, Turkey is still got close ties with Russia, and I don't think that's going to change. Just recently, Turkey has kind of warmed up a little bit to Israel for the first time in several years, seeming to be a little bit friendlier. But make no mistake about it, they are involved in this military attack on Israel. And there they are, just to the north of Israel, with a presence in Syria, which is right on the Israeli northern border. You know, it says here that the reason for their attack is because they want the spoils that they can get out of Israel. It says this, listen to verse 12 of Ezekiel 38. They come to take plunder and to take booty, to stretch out their hand against the waste places that are again inhabited, and against a people gathered from the nations, who have acquired livestock and goods, who dwell in the midst of the land. So there's what a description of modern Israel, which was once an absolute area of just waste. To go after that area for booty would be laughable, a century ago. But Israel today has become very, very prosperous. They have recently discovered huge reserves of oil and natural gas there in that little country of Israel. Their technology industry is virtually leading the world. There are many areas of technology in which Israel is right on the cutting edge of technology. And then you've got their incredible production of farming produce, from fruits and vegetables to grains. That little country is just hugely productive. On top of that, and you don't hear much about this, but do you realize Israel is sort of a center in the diamond world? They are a hub of the trading and manufacturing of polished diamonds. So Israel's a very wealthy place. And then you look at Russia, And the oil and the natural gas, the produce, the technology, not to mention the diamonds. And then you've got Iran and Turkey, which have the same motivation, plus they've got that strong religious fervency to see Israel wiped off the map. You know, Islam has been and had an ongoing jihad against the Jews and against Israel. And they will not be satisfied until Israel is utterly and completely destroyed and removed. So there you've got it set up. Well, there were a couple other countries mentioned here, and that was Ethiopia and Libya, which literally in the Hebrew are Cush and Put. And they describe the country immediately south of Egypt, which is the Sudan today, and to the west of Egypt, which is Libya today, Libya. And it's kind of interesting that the Sudan has been developing close ties with Turkey, and Libya has gotten very close to Russia. And so there's that sense of unity there. So you've got these 5 countries that are Islamic, that are anti-Israeli, and they're kind of cozying up together. Exactly what the Bible said 3,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago. Would be the case in the last days. You know what's interesting about that whole scenario? The countries that are not listed. Egypt is not listed. Syria is not listed. Jordan is not listed. Iraq is not listed. It's these other countries. And interestingly enough, these countries are not in a place to fight against Israel today. Egypt has a peace treaty with Israel, and so does Jordan. Syria is virtually non-existent, and Iraq has been talking about normalizing relationships with Israel. So here you've got this Middle East lined up exactly like the Bible said it would be in the last days as we come to the end of the age. Now, I don't think that's a coincidence. So here we are, you know. It looks like it could really be close. And you know what? There's still more. So part 5 will be coming up next. But you know what Jesus said when he talked about all of these things lining up in the world? He said, look up, for your redemption is drawing near. So, brethren, be encouraged. The world may look like it's out of control, but Jesus is going to win. And Christian, you're in his family. You're in his kingdom. You're with him, and he's with you. Doesn't get better than that. Does not get better than that. Talk to you later.